helping protect the Capitol complex were being made to rest in parking garages between their shifts. I don't think a single senator feels that was acceptable. I'm glad the situation was resolved, and I hope we learn exactly what happened. In that regard, I want to thank all the National Guard, including more than 300 Kentucky Guardsmen and local and federal law enforcement who've helped supplement our very own Capitol Police in the wake of January the 6th. Your Congress and your country appreciate all you've done to secure the Capitol and the inauguration. Later today, I'll have the honor of meeting a number of my Kentuckians who've been helping out here at the Capitol. It's going to be the highlight of my day. In the near future, Congress needs to smartly transition toward a more sustainable security presence. Keeping the Capitol safe cannot and will not require huge numbers of uniformed troops and vast systems of emergency fencing to remain in place forever. With the inauguration behind us, we should find the right middle ground between the unacceptable lapses 3 weeks ago and the extraordinarily short-term measures that have been put in place since that time. In the meantime, we need to make darn sure that we look after the men and women who look after us. Now, Mr. President, on a totally different matter, while business proceeds on the floor, the Democratic leader and I are continuing to flesh out the structure of this 50-50 Senate. When leaders Lott and Daschle wrote a similar agreement 20 years ago, there wasn't a need at all to reaffirm the basic standing rules that govern legislation here in the Senate. It was safely assumed that no majority would break this rule for short-term gain. Floor remarks surrounding those 2001 discussions specifically cite the legislative filibuster as an important and unquestioned part of the backdrop that lay beneath the negotiations on the finer details. It was assumed no one would ever take that step. After the fact, Leader Daschle, the Democrat, praised the legislative filibuster as a crucial rule. President Biden has praised this distinctive feature of the Senate on many occasions. Our current Democratic colleagues used it liberally over the last several years when they were in the minority. More than 24 signed a bipartisan letter in 2017 saying our Republican majority should not break the rule by brute force. Let me say that again. 24 Democrats signed a bipartisan letter in 2017 saying our Republican majority should not break this rule by brute force. I agreed. I didn't do it. President Trump was not happy with that. He tweeted against me numerous times because I didn't put an end to the legislative filibuster. And so the Democrats used it constantly, as they had every right to. They were happy to insist on a 60-vote threshold for practically every major bill I took up. So we'll continue to request that our Democrat colleagues reaffirm this standing rule of the Senate, which they have been happy to use on many occasions, I can attest. If we're going to truly replicate the 2001 agreement, we need to reaffirm this crucial part of the foundation that lay beneath it. Yesterday, I also shared a proposal for the pretrial steps in the Senate impeachment process that appears to be headed our way, and as I understand it, must be headed our way Monday. By Senate rules, if the article arrives, we have to start a trial right then. This impeachment began with an unprecedentedly fast and minimal process over in the House. The sequel cannot be an insufficient Senate process that denies former President Trump his due process or damages the Senate or the presidency itself. Senate Republicans strongly believe we need a full and fair process where the former president can mount a defense and the Senate can properly consider the factual, legal, and constitutional questions at stake. For that reason, we suggest the House transmits this article next Thursday, but that's apparently going to be next Monday, that former President Trump's answer and the House pretrial brief, I suggested, be due on February 4th, and the former president's pretrial brief be due I suggested on February the 11th. That timeline would have provided the Senate some more floor time before we step up fully into the unknown of a trial, which, by the way, would have been a substantial benefit to the incoming administration and allowed them to get more of their cabinet confirmed, which we are cooperating as best we can to expedite. So finally, Mr. President, on one final matter, regarding those nominees, we're considering President Biden's nominees for key cabinet posts. On Wednesday, Avril Haines was confirmed as Director of National Intelligence on a big bipartisan vote, including my own. We hope to be able to consider Tony Blinken to be the Secretary of State early next week. Today, we're considering General Lloyd Austin, President Biden's nominee, to serve as Secretary of Defense. I voted to approve the waiver that would allow him to serve in this post yesterday, notwithstanding the 7-year cooling-off period after military service. And I'll be voting in favor of his confirmation. I'm voting yes because the nominee is clearly qualified and because presidents should get real latitude to fill their terms with qualified mainstream people of their choosing. At the same time, the Senate should pause and reflect on the fact that we'll have begun 2 consecutive presidential administrations by issuing a waiver to a 4-star general and former CENTCOM commander to lead the Pentagon. The Armed Services Committee held a hearing last week to examine the waiver and the current state of civil-military relations at the Pentagon. I expect the committee will continue to pay close attention to this important issue in the months ahead, and will investigate steps that Congress can take to help restore balance over at the Pentagon. The law that we keep waiving actually exists for a good reason. Civilian control of the military is a fundamental principle of our republic. We emphatically do not want high-ranking military service to become a tacit prerequisite for civilian leadership posts over at the Department of Defense. It's not just about a simplistic fear that the military will end up running itself. To the contrary, many experts are worried that military leaders' appropriate fixation on being non-political may not prepare them for the job to forcefully fight for armed services amid the political rough and tumble in the executive branch and here in Congress. Put another way, they're taught from the beginning to stay out of politics entirely, but you do want a Secretary of Defense who's willing to engage in the issue-based discussions that we have related to the department. So nevertheless, I'll vote today to confirm a clear patriot with an impressive career, but I'll cast that vote with the understanding that our new Secretary of Defense specifically commits to balancing civil-military relations, empowering civilian leaders at the Pentagon, and playing an active role in the inherently political budget process to get our forces what they need. Our intensifying competition with China and Russia and all the other threats we face demand nothing less.